Hello. So I'm back and I'm going to read you a couple of more poems and give you a little bit more backstory on them from my books. So the first book I'm going to read from is my book, Black Man, Black Woman, Black Child, which explores what it means to be a black person in this country from the perspectives of man, woman, child, from what a family unit could possibly look like, and then what it means when you walk out the door. So the last poem in this book is a little long. It's the first really long poem I ever wrote. And so bear with me as I read it. And it's a little outdated, but I think it's an interesting time to read it given all the conversations around reparations and who is eligible. Trouble with labels. While babysitting me one day, my neighbor ripped my comfortable, familiar label away. She said that I was not a true African American, that it belonged to those like her, those recently born in Africa that became American. My identity demolished, my innocent views were destroyed, and I carried those words in my pocket like I do my bubblegum. Here and there I pulled it out, chew on those jagged words, roll them across my tongue, and savor its bitter taste. But it took maturing for me to see that she was foolishly trivializing things that she knew nothing about. See, African American was created for me, while black embraces all. It includes any person of a similar hue, whether they descend from Africa, the West Indies, or Latin countries. And though I too am black, I am African American first. I was the one playing with my kin on my soil when we were ambushed. I was the one dragged to holding camps where I first saw what my future would entail. I can still hear the hunting jingle of chains. I can hear the whips crackling through the air. I was the one herded onto a ship. My body was intermingled with carcasses for a terrifying eternity in a cramped, diseased space. When allowed to see daylight again, it was looming over this hostile land that I was now someone's property, a princess, now made a servant. My status was beaten out of me by my sadistic owners. They taught me to mistrust my neighbors, friends, and kin. I, like a wild steed, was broken and trained, my name taken away. A new religion, a new language, a new way of being were forcibly shoved down my parched throat to the point of choking. I hungrily watched my mom be given away and then cried as my nursing babies were ripped violently from my breast. I was banned from marriage, so I jumped the broom, but was still made to breed with another. My blood dyed the cotton and flavored the tobacco. I bled at the whipping post. My sanctuary ran red when raped by my master. I bled and cried and bled, but no one could hear. I fled my bondage and slaughtered my masters with the likes of Nat Turner. I traveled the train to freedom. I was caught, beaten, and still fled again. I scraped and saved for my freedom, and I carried my emancipation letter at all times, praying that it would not be ignored. Once a traveler of the train, became a railroad stop. This is my legacy, not your history. You have your own culture, your own beautiful heritage. I was stripped of mine, so I began to secretly create a new one. I grew my two fists, making me whole. I laid the concrete that welcomed you into the States. I paved the way from slave, sharecropper, and indentured servant. I wrote the lyrics to the encrypted spirituals. I fought in the battles and died to gain freedom. These buildings, this monopoly was built on my black. I ignored the Jim Crow laws. I went to the diners, drank from the fountains, sat on the bus and would not get up. I was dragged out. My churches were burnt. Crucifixes were set ablaze, fueled by racist rage. I was lynched. I was made the main course at their picnics. I was tarred and feathered, made to look like a chicken, but I was not. I was hosed, but my fire never died. I was brutalized and still preached love. Though silenced, I still voted. No one was going to stop me. I had a dream and I was going to come true by any means. Without me, there would be no filament. Street lights wouldn't exist. Sugar and honey wouldn't be refined. I made the flyer ladder and created blood banks. I made refrigerators mobile. I invented elevators, hot combs, gas masks, pencil sharpeners, and street sweepers. I made the steam radiator and the third rail. I created coin counting tubes and even helped in the invention of x-rays. What did you do here? Did you resuscitate Harlem? Did you write the poems, sing the music, and do the dances? Did you rub the tree of hope? Did you perform in the same places you were banned from? Were you the first person of color to enter the hallowed halls of Oberlin? Were you killed for looking at a white woman? Did you march with King and stand with Malcolm? Was it you that was persecuted here for all those years? No. But it was my great-grandmother that was banned from reading. My grandparents that only made it to high school. My mom was the first to get her degree. Where were you when this world was changing because of me? I am rhythm and blues, hip-hop, gospel. I'm Universal Circus. I am BET, Ebony, Jet. I am Ngozi Saba. I celebrate a harvest that I will never see. I am Affirmative Action, the NAACP, and the Urban League. I am Black Panthers. I am the Civil Rights Movement. I am African American. I eat collard greens, fried chicken, chitlins, gumbo, black-eyed peas, okra, mustard greens, and kale. I am cabbage, gizzards, whiting, sweet potato pie, stuffing, and tongue. I eat catfish, barbecue beef ribs, bacon, and grits. These are my traditional foods. I am Araminta Ross, Tanya Allen, Sojourner Truth, Madam CJ, Sonia Sanchez, Rosa Parks, Harriet Jacobs, Toni Morrison, Nikki Giovanni. I am Marian Anderson, Ms. Baker, Condoleezza Rice, Mary McLeod Bethune, Shirley Chisholm, and Dr. Mae Jameson. I am Blanche Kelso Bruce, Arthur Ashe, Henry Box Brown, Dr. Drew, Langston Hughes, Crispus Attucks, Joseph Winters, Leroy Jones, Judd Scott, Mr. Douglas, Alexander Ashbourne, Garrett Morgan, County Cullen. I, too, sing America and Africa. I was African, molested and raped by white masters. My children were born all shades, and in my search for home for the familiar, I hid in the arms of Native Americans. My skin is deep yellow, bronze, burnt rust, dark chocolate, and charcoal. My blood is so mixed that African American is the only term that can truly define me and my plight. That can properly name all the atrocities and show the strength in whom I have become. I was African, but I cannot go home. I am now too American. I have forgotten my native tongue. I cannot go back to which I have been detached to for so long. But yet you come here wearing my name, saying that I am nothing more than AIDS-infected junkie, a prostitute, and a convict. You say I am lazy, good for nothing, but it was I that opened the door. It wasn't for me. If it wasn't for me, you'd have immigrated as slave. You'd still be captive on the bottom of a boat, not comfortably sitting on a plane. If I am such a disgrace to your tone, why still my name? See, by taking my identity, you are only clouding and trivializing a struggle in which you have no right to claim. Those acres and that mule are mine, not yours. This plight is one in which you know nothing about. So while I raise my fist and scream black power with anyone with the same shade, I will not share my African American name, for I have already lost everything else. Everything once known to me has been cruelly taken away. Now, cousin, please don't join in this reap too. So I wrote this poem, oh my gosh, probably in 2005, a long time ago. And it wasn't me who had their babysitter tell them that, but it was my ex. His babysitter told him that statement. And at that same time, or somewhere around then, I had been making I have a very large online community of friends. And so I had become friends with this gentleman, and that was his whole thing. He was like telling me all the times about how horrible Black Americans were and how we were nothing but like these like AIDS babies and addicts and these terrible things that were just not true. They were just the stereotypes that we were thugs. Like those are the stereotypes that you get on TV, but it's not who we really are or what we have been through. And so all of that sort of came together to that poem. And it took me a while to write it because I had to do a lot of research. I had some other people in there who I know for sure were not African American by descent. They were more recently tied to the Caribbean. But I think it's an interesting conversation interesting poem to read now as we're in conversation about reparations. I'm intrigued to see where the reparations conversation will go. I have a lot of opinions on it, but the main opinion is whatever is done, if anything is done at all, that something has to be done to acknowledge the original sin. And that does not necessarily mean for everyone who's come here, even though we are all subjected to the price of that sin. The fact of the matter is something has to be said to acknowledge the people who were forced here and who were raised here and who lost so many chances and opportunities because of being born here and being born to descendants of the enslaved. So whatever, that's my little soapbox on that. So the next poem, oh, this is going to be another hard one. So Casualty of Love, which is my book about what it means to have been a survivor of domestic violence and sexual assault and all that other stuff. It plays with all the fun parts of love. There's a lot of fun and then there's a lot of hurt. So I'm going to read something that I've never read because this is the point of these readings, right? It's to read the things that I will not get to read on stage to you. So The Victimized Victim. I've never read this, but this is inspired by one of my favorite poets, Stacey Ann Chin, because she wrote something that sort of played in perspectives. So you can see the way the book looks. I'm reading from 3 different perspectives, kind of. The Victimized Victim. It's a difficult game of he said, she said. The definition is too ambiguous to prosecute. They say only 40% of assaults get reported. A man in a blue suit set me in a claustrophobic room. His stern words, "Why did you wait? What caused the delay?" In a new yet familiar state, I uttered fear. I was afraid to face my reality. I feared owning my hurts. I feared that no one would believe. I feared him, and all of those fears paralyzed my tongue. Fear limited speech like it did that night when fear of what could happen paralyzed me into letting it happen. The worst case, now reality, because I was struck like a deer. I frozen, complied. He got his way so that I wouldn't have to feel that sting of the strike that I feared. Why did you wait so long? All I could say was fear and naivety, fear and the naive hope that he was just overzealous and that I was too weak to draw the line. I just hoped it wasn't the nightmare that I know that it was. It's a difficult game of he said, she said. So it was buyer's remorse, uttered the blue man. I know how it goes. You planned on saying no, got caught in the moment, then said yes. His blue searing eyes saw my embarrassed flesh but never heard my words, never absorbed what I said. I, exposed to an utter stranger that mutates my words. What I feared true, Mr. Blue, a manipulator and member of the club, he twisting my strong nose into a weak okay, like my date did, like my smooth attacker did. The definition is too ambiguous, too vague to prosecute. His icy blue lips requested the details that were not to his satisfaction. It was like reading his acidic emails. You ugly hoe. You didn't take your clothes off. I didn't take your clothes off, so how could you call it that? Besides, you wanted me since we danced together on that floor. You crazy, ugly bitch. I dated better, so why would I date you? You're just a whore. Well, he didn't rip your clothes off, didn't brutalize you, so while I believe you mentally think you were violated, but no grand jury would you? Would you believe your story? It honestly is a bit shaky. Yes, the law says if you said no, he should stop. Even if it's the bride says no, her groom didn't, I must pursue it. But, and Mr. Blue continued on. They say only 40% ever get reported. So you say I can only file an harassment complaint. My story not good enough, not believable enough. My tears not red enough. My trembling not enough proof. I shared my most painful, precious secret. You took it and trashed it. He took it and trashed it. He just took it and trashed me like he. Mr. Blue, why did others suggest I come to you? If only they, if only he, if only you really knew. They say 40% gets reported. It's a difficult game of he said, she said. The definition is too ambiguous to prosecute. But what about those that muster up the courage and try and are denied? What about them? So I wrote that after I went to the police. And that was really my experience, having gone to the police and tried to report it. The short story after, so the incident happened, and then I just assumed it was a bad incident, and I just could not name it. And then I was in therapy because I had lost my sister, and so I saw a guy and saw a play, and it triggered all these feelings. And I called my therapist and I was like, we need to talk about this. And she's the one who goes, no, you've been exhibiting all the signs of someone who had been date raped. And so that was 4 months later. And then I still never said anything to most people 4 months after that. And then until 4 months later, he found me on a dating website and he tried to hit on me. And I said, hey, what you thought was a good night was not a good night. It was actually assault. And he did not take to that and proceeded to harass me in the dating app in which we were on. So I don't use that dating app for fear of him ever finding me. And there's a lot of fears I have, or something that happened 13 years ago, which seems ridiculous, but they're real because of what happened. But that was what it was like when I finally went to the police, because he was harassing me so much in email. He was harassing me so much in email that I finally went to the police to get help, and they just said, we can file a complaint about digital harassment, and that was it. So this is why people don't go to the police, because you get shoved into a tiny room with men that are overbearing and you don't know how to cope, and that's the experience. So that's book 2. And then I think I've never read this, and I don't know how this is going to go. I've never read any of the poems that I'm reading you. So there's also that. So 2 X chromosomes, an extra shot of melanin. This is the book where I explore what it means to be a black woman. It's my poetic exploration of intersectional feminism, where I look at what it means to be black, what it means to be a woman, and then what happens when those two come together. And so this is from the what it all means section of the book, which is ultimately the black woman section. So this is it's the cover picture, but it says what it all means. Cover picture. No comparison, but similar still. He hung wearily from the branches, sliced, bleeding, abandoned, whole savagely driven into his bony appendages, his heavenly crown stripped, replaced by thorns. But he still uttered words of love, worked until the work was done. This is how the Messiah was treated. So why should she in her tan skin with her woolly hair expect anyone to hear her plea or feel empathy when she wails with sorrow from the centuries of injustices suffered? How can she expect a nation to understand their freedom from racism can only be gained in emancipating her? Their liberation from this consuming rage starts in refusing to subjugate anymore. Ending slavery on paper and allowing her to vote was not enough to save souls. It was not enough. It was not a good enough deed to bridge the gap between sin and salvation. They must see her, hear her, assist her, and resist with her. Grace must be sought. But these are those who use his words to unleash bile and spew hate, never heeding the example displayed on that cross on that Friday. They misunderstood his purpose, denying him still. And though she isn't he, though there is no comparison to be made, she still finds herself existing similarly. She, like he gives all there is, provides, nourishes, supports, guides, advocates for others, and is repaid with dismissal, contributions used as sources of humor and humiliation. Her role is that of degradation. She left on display on this play aptly titled America, Their Story. She is not he. She will never be. She is just following his lead. She's just a small, vital part of his humanly faulty family, the one who bears the wrath of and for her weaker kin. Why then would they never really consider her plight when they never truly... Why then would they ever really consider her plight when they never truly or earnestly appreciated his? So, I don't have a backstory to that. I don't know why I wrote it. I think, I don't write stuff that's religious based, but it just, at some point I was like, well, if people treated Jesus Christ that way and no one paid attention to him, and we still don't even acknowledge that he had woolly hair and tan skin, why are we expecting people to pay attention to black women? We should, just like we should have been paying attention to him. But it just sort of a poem that I've wanted to read, but I haven't necessarily had a space for reading it. So thank you guys for going along with my tour today of my 3 books: Black Man, Black Woman, Black Child, Casualty of Love, and 2 X Chromosomes with an Extra Shot of Melanin. You can get your copies online. And check out my website, darikm.com, for more excerpts from the books, for my calendar of when I'll be performing next, as well as I at least have 2 more features for the end of the year. So check out where to find me next on my website, and to get some books and to interact with me. I'll speak to you soon.